Thank you very much. So we're going from high-tech quantum computing to mikrotiks doing CGNAT. This will be an interesting comparison. Hi, my name's Matthew. I'm from Leaptel, if you haven't heard of us. I'm going to talk to you today about mikrotik and CGNAT and talk about what we have done. Pretty sure I shouldn't be admitting some of this, but it should be good fun along the way. So who are we? That's a terrible photo of me. I'm a network engineer. I'm self-taught. I've learned all the bad things well. And I decided to start an ISP at one point and discovered mikrotik. And here I am. Who's Leaptel? Smallish internet service provider. We're actually now hitting 70,000 subscribers once you include NBN as well. Privately owned, 300 gig nationally at peak, a bit more when whichever game it is, it puts its update out at the wrong time. NBN, Opticom, good support, lots of good things. And we have wholesale, so if anyone's looking for bandwidth, I have lots of bandwidth to sell, so please come talk to me. Lots of good things there. So, what am I trying to solve here? Well, small ISP starting up, I didn't have enough IP address space, I didn't have enough for IPv4. IPv6 was great, and I'm still rolling that out and getting it better. mikrotik and IPv6 at the time was definitely not a good thing. So I had to implement CGNAT. So looking for a solution that scales and also one that the police are going to be able to talk to me and not make my job too hard. So taking some learnings from other things I've seen out there, and this is what I came up with. So Aussie Broadband did a great presentation a few years ago about CGNAT and how they implemented it. And one of the things I learned in there is you do not want to log every session. So very quickly discovered that I need to find a way to do it. So we're using fixed port-based allocations, and mikrotik do make this very easy to do. So we're using 250 ports per customer. The challenge with mikrotik is it is 250 ports, and that is it. You cannot grow it dynamically. Once it's set, it's set. So here we go. So what about Leaptel? Well, this is what we were using in August 2025. 250 ports. There's Mark hiding there behind it, plugging cables in for me. But yeah, we're basically using this pretty much hardware to do CGNAT on the bottom of the screen there. Leaptel's current design, BNG plugs directly into a mikrotik CGNAT box and basically then goes out to the internet. Can anyone see what happens when the mikrotik reboots? What are we using? CCR 2216s. They've got 200 gig ports on them, 25 gig ports that we just don't use. Good amount of CPU, good amount of RAM. What can they do? We can put 40 gig through these things. And it actually works. It's quite amazing what you can do with them. And the limiting factor is basically that you start to hit the lanes between the CPU and the actual processor. So there's 4 25 gig lanes, as you can see there on the diagram. And yeah, you start to hit those limits. So 40 gigs is about the right limit, and you start going beyond that, they start doing some things like rebooting. Connection tracking is maxing out at that particular value there, just over 1 million. mikrotik, I did ask them, could you please expand it? There's plenty of RAM in this thing. No, so kind of limits me out. So what's our design now? We're heading to. So we are starting to look at how we can use these better to try and give us a bit more redundancy in this design in our smaller pops. So bigger pops, we're going to another vendor because we just can't scale really, really big with these, but I'm never going to end up with a huge amount of these left over, so I'm going to make this solution really go. So this is what I'm going to show you what we did. So what did I do? We look at using VRRP towards the BNG so that if one of them reboots, the other one just picks up the load. BGP towards the layer 3 switch, doing AS prepans so that automatically fails over. Allocating ports, there's a link to the article that mikrotik have. It has a really good script you can use, and actually that will do 95% of the configuration for you. Limitation, the design does assume that there will be one of the CGNAT boxes online or offline. You take a single port off somewhere, it'll probably break the config. So my test rig, I had some 1036s sitting around in the office, plugged it in and made this work. So there's my software. That's what it looks like. There's some IP addresses on there. You can see I'm using 100.64 IPs to actually do the linking between the BNG and the CGNAT boxes, allocating pools from similar ranges, yeah, off we go. So first thing we have to do is configure all of our interfaces. So I've got here assigning IP addresses. VLAN 20 is going to be our internet VLAN, where the public internet sits. Configuring VRRP on the internal side, assigning the IP addresses. So in this particular scenario, I'm assuming that I have two BNGs. They are splitting the load across two mikrotiks. And if one of the mikrotiks decides to go offline, the other one is going to pick up the load. So they're basically active-active kind of configuration rather than active-passive. Configuring the internet side, IP addresses, a little bit of basic routing. Configuring the pools. So this one here is just about setting up some, effectively a loopback interface, which is just the bridge, calling it pool, assigning the IP addresses that we want on the public side, so that mikrotik will inject these particular IP addresses into the route table and push them out via BGP. BGP side, I'm not sure if some of you have played using BGP on Router OS 7. I must admit this was actually my first time doing this because I've avoided it until now, but it actually wasn't too bad. So first thing we did is set up an address list which listed all the IP addresses that this particular box is going to look after. So CGN1 is the IP addresses that this box is primary for. CGN2 is the addresses that it's backup for. And you'll see why in a second. It's important to distinguish this. Adjust connection tracking. Your connection tracking will fill up very quickly on the defaults, which I think are 24 hours. We found that setting it to 31 minutes seems to work quite well. We turned it down, and we were seeing this was basically able to handle 7,000 subscribers behind it quite happily. So, filter rules for BGP. So as you can see here, because we applied the same rules on both boxes, on CGN1, it's going to basically not prepend on the CGN1 tagged box. The CGN2 ones, it does a prepend on it. On CGN2, we've just flipped that around. BGP template, setting up the BGP session. We're using a private AS number between the mikrotik and, in our case, the Arista switch, just so that we can set up BGP and keep it happy. And needed to use eBGP in this case to get it to actually work properly, hence the private AS number. So here we are adding the rules in to get BGP going between the two, applying the filter out and telling it to use the correct template. And the end result is you get this. Basically, every single IP address is coming from both mikrotik boxes. One's prepended, one's not. So that way, when one of them drops, it immediately just updates the route table and goes to the other one. Yes. CGNAT static port allocation setup. So this is the bit that you want to make sure you understand if you want to not have law enforcement breaking down your door and hurting you. So we need to set up rules. So CGNAT 1 and 2, because we're doing active, if one falls over, we have to have the same rules on the other box so it can actually pick up the load. So we're using VRRP, running 2 VRRP sessions on each one. Basically, one's failing over for the other. Okay, so I created, the number of things I've done in network configuration with Excel is really mind-boggling. You end up creating a spreadsheet for basically tracking all the port allocations. In our case, we have our BNGs assigning customers IP addresses from the CGNAT range itself. It pushes that IP address into the radius packet in accounting, and we keep track of which customer has what IP address, so I can actually backtrack this. We then use a table, basically, starting at the first port, allocating the first 250 ports, and that way I can go, this is going to get this IP, this is going to get this IP, and then when I get a request from law enforcement, I'm just reversing that process. Probably could script this, but Excel was just easier. Okay, this is the mikrotik script, it's on the wiki. And of course it's Excel. I can use the concat function and make a whole lot of things look pretty. So I generated all my rules for the first one for each IP allocation. Off we go. And this is what it does. So here I am pasting the script from the mikrotik wiki. And now I'm going to paste the actual config from my Excel. Job done. That was easy. Okay, ICMP won't work in this by default, which will give you a really bad day, especially with a lot of routers pinging out to the internet to see if they actually are connected. So I've got here a rule you can do to add ICMP. If you want to support protocols like IPsec and other things, you'll want to also add those in here as well, because otherwise it's just going to do TCP and UDP. Fast track, don't forget to do this if you want your mikrotik to actually perform quite well. That's a screenshot from the wiki on mikrotik showing that on a RB2011, adding fast track enabled them to basically double the throughput. It actually does double the throughput, so well worth doing. It'll stop your box causing you a lot of grief. Testing. So I decided to see, okay, I'm just going to run a ping through this. How quickly will VRIP cut over? Ran the ping, rebooted the box, only dropped 4 packets. Not quite Amazon level, but I was pretty happy with that. Okay, this is, you can see during the reboot that the BGP actually dropped, and you can see that the route table did change. And that's why it's important to have the prepends there. It handled the failover perfectly. Connection tracking reset. There is actually a really cool feature which I haven't played yet with on the latest version of RadOS 7. With VRIP, you can actually synchronize connection tracking. That way, in theory, if one does fall over, the other one will pick up the load immediately. But I was asking the question, do you actually need to bother? Well, I've tested this in production, and this is what happens when it reboots. A minute later, traffic just comes straight back. So I would say it's probably not worth the extra effort. It just works. And as long as it doesn't reboot multiple times in a day, Whirlpool doesn't notice. So my conclusion on all this, this is a really cheap solution. I mean, $5,000 per box versus how much it costs to do this with real, I hate to say enterprise gear, but basically commercial gear at a really high scale. Quick cutover, it works really, really well. And for a challenger RSP like we were, it came in at the perfect price points and gave us a lot of functionality and a lot of growth. It does have scaling limits, which is what we're hitting now. I either start to put racks and racks and racks of this stuff, or I start looking at other solutions. It does limit you to 250 ports or whatever you decide is your port limit, and it doesn't have that growth opportunity. I would really love to see mikrotik do dynamic port allocation where you can do actual growth and actually log it, but I think that might be a little bit way past their, where they're going. It will randomly reboot on you. I will say that if you get one that reboots a lot, the guys at Duxtel were awesome, helping us to figure out that we had a faulty unit and actually bench testing it for about a month to basically fight with mikrotik to go, yeah, the unit actually is faulty. But they are generally pretty good and very reliable. I've got units that have been operating for months without a single problem. We still need to figure out how we can distribute on the B&G side so that we can handle multiple ones of these. I got to be careful with ECMP because I need the IP addresses to go a certain way. I can't have them sending source traffic from the same client to multiple CGNAT boxes because the port allocations are fixed and the IP address that they're going to NAT out is going to be one. It's going to go the wrong way back. So I've got to do some work there on getting that bit to work, but otherwise it scales really, really well. Does anyone have any questions?